Alrighty, in this demo, I'm going to show you how to onboard your virtual machines and other Azure resources into an Azure Log Analytics workspace. We're going to do this from the context of Azure Log Analytics. So your first order of business is to create what's called a Log Analytics workspace. So we can do a search here in the Azure portal for Log Analytics. As I've mentioned previously, you can have more than one workspace to serve different monitoring purposes. I'll click Add to show you what's involved. Now remember that the term OMS is going away, but you'll still see references to it in the portal as the transition proceeds. So although this is a Log Analytics workspace, you see it says right here in the first field, OMS workspace. You have a location, and then for pricing tier, if you work at the free tier, you get so many gigabytes per day ingestion and so many days worth of retention. I encourage you to look at the Log Analytics pricing page. You can see a link to it right here in the blade. And of course, in the exercise files, it's there as well. I already have a working Log Analytics workspace, so I'm going to cancel out of that process and let's come directly into it. Your workspace itself is initially just an empty data warehouse. You're going to need to start to point resources into that workspace. And to that, we'll want to scroll down the settings list to workspace data sources. And in particular, I want to start with virtual machines, because this is enormously easy. To onboard your virtual machines that are already in Azure, it's literally as easy as filtering on the appropriate subscriptions and resource groups, finding the virtual machines. Notice that OS can be Linux or Windows, it doesn't matter. For ones that are not connected, I can change that by making a selection and simply choosing Connect. And after a moment's pause, Microsoft is now deploying the Microsoft Monitoring Agent extension into that VM. Here, now we see WinDemo1 is successfully connected to this workspace. Now, what do you do in a hybrid cloud scenario if you have on-premises Windows Server or Linux virtual machines? Well, to that end, we're going to come up to Settings, Advanced Settings in our workspace. And under Connected Sources, we'll follow the wizard here depending upon what it is we want to add. If it's a Windows server, then we're going to download the agent. I'm going to download the 64-bit agent to my computer. It probably will not install because I'm on Windows 10, but I can at least show you part of the workflow. It's just a simple MSI installer. And helpfully, Microsoft provides us with the Log Analytics Workspace ID and private authentication key as well. Let's see how far we get here. The Microsoft Monitoring Agent Setup Wizard. Okay, so far so good. All right. We're going to select here OMS or Azure Log Analytics. I don't have a System Center Operations Manager site going right now, so we'll select Next. And here we go, Workspace ID and the private key. So I'm going to start by copying the workspace ID, then the private key, bring that back. You have a choice of government or public cloud. I'm in public. You can do some advanced HTTP. You might want to check the documentation on ensuring that you're using TLS 1.2. I have a link to that in the exercise files. Click Next. And it looks like it's actually going to complete, which is interesting. I didn't expect that it would on a Windows client box. All right. So after this installs, we're going to have a TLS connection that does not require a VPN, such that we now can manage this on-premises machine that I'm on right now in our Log Analytics subscription. Just in case you were wondering, the Linux also has an agent for it. It's the same exact thing here. So you've got full spectrum, what's called first-class citizen coverage for both Windows servers and Linux servers in your workspace. All right, so that covers how to get your virtual machines sending their diagnostics telemetry data into OMS. Now, if we come back to the virtual machines blade momentarily, let's take a quick look. I'm going to grab DC1 at random here. And if we filter the settings list for extensions, let's have a look at what's there. Right. So you see that we have the Azure Performance Diagnostics, and it looks like the provisioning failed for that one, interestingly. I'll have to consider that a homework assignment. And we also have the Microsoft Monitoring Agent. So this speaks to the fact that those are in fact separate agents. That is, if you're just doing basic guest OS diagnostics, that's the Azure Performance Diagnostics extension. If you're going to an Azure Log Analytics Workspace, that will be the Microsoft Monitoring Agent extension, okay? As far as your app services apps are concerned, those work through application insights. So let me show you that. We'll select our web app. And if I filter the list for insights, it'll bring us to the insights page within the context of the app. And then to view the actual data, we click out to the application insight resource. And this has its own dashboard and it has its own entry point into Azure Log Analytics. See this analytics button? So that's the path for your Azure App Services apps. You link them up to an application insights instance, and then you can go the way of dashboard, analytics, or individual tools. Let me quickly call up the dashboard because it's pretty impressive, actually, even though in my case, my app is not doing anything really. It's just freshly created. We have usage, reliability, and responsiveness, a whole lot of cool, pretty pictures with which to gain telemetry insights into your web app's performance and behaviors. Well, what else do we have? Well, remember in Azure Monitor, let's go to Azure Monitor. We have down towards the bottom of the settings list, diagnostic settings. And this is where you can round up all of the various and sundry resources that may be associated with your app service apps or your virtual machines, but they have separate diagnostic streams that you enable separately. For instance, we have the load balancer. It looks like I've already enabled diagnostics for that. Let me go to a public IP address, for instance. We turn on diagnostics. You'll remember this from the previous modules demo. Pub IP diag. And then you choose to archive to a storage account, stream to an event hub, or here it is, send to Log Analytics. So if we want to manage and get to this telemetry data, we need to make the step to bind this resource into that Log Analytics workspace. And then don't forget to pick up any resource-specific logs that you need, as well as performance metrics. And of course, save your changes. Another place where Log Analytics comes in is Azure Security Center. Security Center is an extremely important service. I hope you're using it at the standard tier for your deployments to take advantage of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph, machine learning. From Security Center, we'll want to come down under Policy and Compliance to Security Policy. And there's some onboarding going on here. Microsoft's made quite a few changes in the latter half of 2018 on how this works. But assuming that you have a subscription that's onboarded into Security Center and you're using the policy, we can go to Edit Settings. And under Data Collection Workspace Configuration, the default option is for Security Center to use its own workspace. But if you want to be able to get to the Security Center data from within your Log Analytics workspace, then you'll want to choose Use Another Workspace, select it from the list, and click Save. Okay? So that enables this. What we're doing, just again to come back to the fundamental question, what are we doing and why are we doing it? We created a Log Analytics workspace that is a central data warehouse for our monitoring. And we're now going through our resources bit by bit, pun intended, and we're pointing their telemetry streams, their diagnostic streams, their metrics towards this single pool of data. We're then, in the next demo I'll show you, we use the Custo query language to report across all of our resources, across all of these different services. It's super duper powerful. Now, let me finish this demo by going to Solutions. Solutions are tracked on a separate blade, which we'll go to right now. And these are what were originally OMS products, and now they're called Log Analytics Management Solutions. You see, I have 3 created here. Network Monitoring, that's Network Performance Monitor, Service Map, which is good for app dependencies, and Wire Data. Now, these are part of a package. Let me go to Add, and I'll show you what's going on here. In the Management Tools section of the Azure Marketplace, you have, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you count Azure Migrate, recommended solutions. And the main one for our purposes today would be Insight and Analytics. Let me click this. And this gives you up to 3 tools that can provide you deeper, insight and analytics. Network Performance Monitor is great because it's a live check on your virtual networks and their subnets and their status from moment to moment. You also can monitor express route circuits and even your connection to Microsoft clouds like Office 365 or Dynamics 365. Service Map is excellent for viewing dependencies. Now, you have that dependency capability built into Application Insights, but if you're using virtual machines to host your line of business applications, Service Map does the same kind of thing. It shows all of your dependencies in a graphical way. And Wire Data, again, comes down to the frame level and allows you to monitor your VNet health. But the bottom line is when you plug in these solutions, notice what's required. You plug them into an OMS workspace because they are actually extensions of that workspace, all right? So for instance, let's take a look at one more just for grins. If we go to Security and Compliance, for example, and we click Create, what's that going to do? That allows us to bring in the anti-malware assessment, which is a centralized way to handle anti-malware. And then there's Security and Audit. That means you get the standard tier of Security Center. One thing that you want to be careful of is when you're coming into your solutions, be careful of what you choose because you want to make sure you're not double paying for a service. Security and Audit is going to give you the standard tier of Security Center. And if you've already enabled the standard tier, you may not want to enable it here. Then let's see, what else can we get into here? Automation and Control. Let's take a look at the products that are included in that bundle. That bundle has an automation hybrid worker. And what that's used for is with Azure Automation, you can run your automation runbooks on premises in a hybrid cloud. Then we have change tracking, which is good for IT service management, and update management, which is, as I sometimes affectionately call, Windows Server update services in the cloud. All right. So all of those, again, by their very installation, require that you plug into a Log Analytics workspace. So to come back one more time to the Log Analytics blade, and let's just sweep up the proverbial shavings here in terms of workspace management. Let's see if we've got anything else here. You can get to your solutions under General Solutions. This is another point to get there. And there we have our Service Map, NPM, and Wire Data. You can adjust your pricing tier at any time from the free to one of the 2 paid tiers. We can get into Application Insights Service Map here. The workspace data sources, that's a very important point. Storage account logs, you can bring in the Azure Activity Log. You can go to individual Azure resources, again, filtering on subscription, resource group, connection status, and you can plug in these directly. This brings in some interesting objects, come to think of it. Wow, actual entire web apps and app service plans. That's something I easily overlooked, actually, back when we were looking at the app services blade itself. So Azure Resources is yet another rich source of potential telemetry data for your unified management with Azure Log Analytics.